They fired me for not playing along, so I bought the company silently and watched them cheer as I fired them one by one. I'm Mark Weston. I'm 38 years old, and until about 3 months ago, I worked for one of the top cybersecurity firms in Seattle. I was with the company for 12 years. I started there fresh out of grad school as a systems analyst, hungry and a little naive, thinking hard work would always be recognized. Over time, I moved up, led some crucial projects, and eventually became a department head. Along the way, I helped launch products that brought in millions, and I thought that meant something. But it turns out, being good at your job isn't always enough. I never played the game. You know the one I mean, corporate politics. I didn't go to happy hours, never joined the fantasy football league, and I sure as hell didn't laugh at the boss's awful jokes. I didn't schmooze, didn't dress to impress. My wardrobe consisted mostly of black jeans, plain shirts, and the same pair of Timberland boots I'd worn since 2014. I figured, why would anyone care, as long as I was delivering? I remember one meeting last year where I presented a security framework we'd spent 6 months building. It was airtight, zero known vulnerabilities, near flawless execution. Afterward, instead of talking about the work, my manager at the time, Jeff, pulled me aside and said, "You know, Mark, maybe you should think about updating your wardrobe. Some of the execs might take you more seriously if you looked like you were trying." I laughed, thought he was joking. He wasn't. But I kept doing what I do, quietly fixing other people's messes, mentoring the interns nobody else wanted, and staying late to patch bugs that could have crippled entire networks. I guess I figured my results would speak louder than my absence at office trivia night. Big mistake. Things shifted subtly at first. A project I normally would have led got handed to a younger guy named Blake, who had a background in sales, but barely understood what a firewall actually did. Blake spent more time in the break room flirting and holding coffee than working, but he wore a different tailored suit every day and never missed a chance to talk about his networking brunches. He called our CTO by her first name within 2 weeks of joining. I'd been there over a decade and still called her Miss Kessler. Then there were the reviews. For years, my performance reviews had been glowing, top tier, exceeding expectations. This year, it was meets expectations, with vague notes about soft skills and team integration. I asked my manager, the same Jeff who'd criticized my wardrobe, what exactly that meant, and he gave me some nonsense about internal visibility and presence. I asked if the drop had anything to do with missed KPIs or failed launches. He said no, it was just about fit. Fit. That word kept echoing. It was like being told I didn't belong in a place I'd helped build, a place I'd given 12 years of my life to. The worst part wasn't even the demotion, the isolation, or the subtle push toward the door. It was when I found out that a junior analyst, a guy I'd trained, was being groomed for my role. His name's Ryan. Good guy, smart, a little green, but enthusiastic. I had no issue with him. The issue was that they were prepping him behind my back, giving him meetings I wasn't invited to, letting him present slides I created. One day, I walked into a conference room and saw him using my architecture diagram to pitch an expansion plan. Nobody even blinked. When I confronted Jeff about it, he didn't even deny it. "It's just succession planning," he said with this condescending smile, like I should be grateful I was being phased out so gracefully. I didn't quit right away. I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe if I just focused on the next product rollout, they'd come around. But the final straw came during a company offsite. They held it at some fancy lodge outside Leavenworth, all rustic charm and catered barbecues. We were told it was a mandatory retreat, focused on team cohesion. I showed up, drove 3 hours out of my way, only to be completely ignored. No one sat next to me at meals. During the scavenger hunt team building activity, I got paired with the only intern who didn't know my name. At the closing dinner, awards were handed out. Blake got Innovator of the Year for a product I drafted the white paper on. Ryan got Emerging Leader. I didn't get so much as a handshake. So I resigned. Quietly. No scene. No rage email. Just a polite letter, turned in on a Monday. Jeff barely looked surprised. HR tried to schedule an exit interview, but I declined. What was I going to say that would matter? My last day, I cleaned out my office alone. No one came by. Not even Ryan. I left my badge on the desk, walked out, and didn't look back. I'm freelancing now, running my own thing. Less money, sure, and the hours are a different kind of crazy. But at least I know who I'm working for. At least when something succeeds, I know who to thank. 12 years. And they couldn't be bothered to say goodbye. It all really started spiraling in early 2021. That's when the board brought in a new CEO, some hotshot from New York named Cody Langford. 33 years old, ex-VC darling. LinkedIn famous for his obnoxious motivational posts about crushing Mondays and turning discomfort into momentum. He had one of those chiseled, overconfident faces like he practiced expressions in the mirror to make sure every photo screamed leadership energy. They announced it in one of those all-hands Zoom calls with the cheesy synth music playing before it started and a forced round of applause at the end. Jeff, our department head at the time, said Cody was going to revolutionize our culture and bring our legacy into the new generation. What he actually brought was chaos. Within a month, things went from professional to completely unhinged. Cody launched something called Operation Culture Spark. I wish I was joking, but he actually had us start every Monday with a 5-minute sync-up dance. Picture a grid of 50 software engineers forced to flail around to Pharrell's Happy at 8:45 a.m. while Cody bopped around in the corner window wearing a branded hoodie and a grin like a caffeinated youth pastor. They said it was optional, but if you didn't turn your camera on or participate, you'd get a follow-up from Culture Ops. Yeah, they made up a new internal team called Culture Ops. No joke, that was just the beginning. We had to start ending every Slack message with a string of emojis. Not just random ones either. There was a whole guide Cody shared. Thumbs up for general acknowledgement, rocket for ideas with growth potential, fire for high-energy tasks, and a damn unicorn for transformational moments. They ran workshops on this. Actual scheduled workshops with breakout rooms and group activities where we gamified feedback loops by rating each other's emoji usage. I sat in one session just staring at the screen while some guy from HR explained how I could emotionally color code my deliverables. I'm not even making that up. Then came the gamification. They turned our KPIs into a literal game dashboard. We had avatars. Mine was assigned as a pixelated raccoon for some reason, and you could earn boosts and badges by completing work with Team Synergy. Every task we logged got converted into points that populated a leaderboard sent out in the Friday newsletter. I remember one week where I spent 3 straight days buried in back-end testing and security patching for a product that had just gone live. Critical stuff. No room for error. And I got a total of 18 points. Meanwhile, Madison from BizDev got 72 because she uploaded 3 videos of her team doing trust falls on Zoom and tagged Cody in every post. She got a shout out in the company-wide email. I got nothing. I stopped playing along pretty quickly. I didn't dance. I didn't post emojis. I stopped using the leaderboard app. I still did my work, still pulled my weight, still shipped code that worked, but I refused to pretend we were all in some kind of corporate summer camp. Cody noticed, or someone on his Culture Ops squad did. A few weeks later, I got a calendar invite from HR, marked urgent, performance alignment check-in. I opened the Zoom, and there was Jeff, some lady from HR I'd never met, and a slide deck titled Cultural Harmony Metrics. They told me I'd received multiple engagement flags. That was their actual term. Engagement flags. Apparently, my lack of participation in Monday dances, my low energy on team calls, and my refusal to contribute to the company-wide gratitude wall on Slack were signs of disengagement. I pointed out that my last 3 projects had shipped ahead of schedule with minimal bugs, and that the system stress test we just ran came back at 99.8% uptime. Jeff nodded but said the issue wasn't my technical output, it was my social presence. Said it was disruptive to have someone so visibly resistant to the new direction of the company. I asked him point blank if refusing to post dancing videos made me a performance risk. He said something about cultural cohesion and internal brand alignment, which basically meant yes. They handed me a formal written warning. First one in 12 years. Not for missing deadlines or failing deliverables. For not fitting into a rebranded tech cult. After the meeting, I sat in my office for over an hour, just staring at the wall. I'd spent over a decade building systems, mentoring staff, cleaning up everyone else's mistakes, and now I was getting flagged because I didn't do emoji therapy on Slack. I didn't say anything to my team. Just kept my head down and got back to work like I always did. But something cracked in me that day. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quiet, like drywall starting to split behind the paint. I kept showing up, but I knew I was done. Maybe not that week, maybe not even that month. But the countdown had started. Cody could keep his avatars and his unicorn gifts. I wasn't going to dance for a company that forgot what the hell it even hired me for. It all blew up faster than I thought it would. I knew I was on thin ice, sure, but I didn't think they'd go full scorched earth on me over some skipped dance calls and a refusal to post fireworks emojis under other people's crushing it announcements. It started with a calendar invite that just said, Internal Audit Findings Review, Confidential. 30 minutes, no agenda, just my name and 3 other attendees. HR, Jeff, and someone from legal I'd never even heard of. I remember looking at that invite on a Tuesday morning and feeling this tight, silent pressure in my chest, like the kind you get when a smoke alarm starts going off and you don't smell fire yet, but you know something's burning. The meeting was as cold as it was short. They said there'd been a culture audit, a deep dive review of internal messaging systems, meeting participation, and interpersonal integration metrics. I asked them what the hell that even meant, and HR, a woman named Cheryl who always smiled like she was trying to sell you a cruise, pulled up a slide with 3 bullet points. Disloyalty to leadership vision. Consistent resistance to culture-building initiatives. Documented passive-aggressive tone in team communications. I actually laughed. Out loud. I thought it was some kind of dry run, like they were testing a parody pitch for an episode of Black Mirror. But they weren't joking. Cheryl looked at me like I'd just started reciting conspiracy theories. Jeff wouldn't even look me in the eye. The legal guy just read off a statement about how I was being let go effective immediately, that my access would be terminated by end of day, and that a security rep would be dispatched to supervise my departure if I entered the building. I didn't get a chance to defend myself. There was nothing to explain. This wasn't about work. It was a purge. A cleanup. I wasn't enthusiastic enough. I didn't throw emojis on people's project updates. I didn't volunteer for team-building scavenger hunts or share mindfulness moments on Slack. I showed up. I did my job. I kept our systems safe. And that made me the problem. But the part that really hit me came about 20 minutes after the call ended. My account was still live, just long enough to catch it. Someone forgot to lock down a channel I was still subscribed to. Hashtag coreteam /leadership /_chat. Not even a private room. Just one of those semi-open management spaces where people drop memes and updates between meetings. That day, someone posted a GIF of fireworks with a caption, "Finally, the dinosaur is gone." The emoji at the end was a green brontosaurus. A few people laughed. One of the junior PMs replied with, "Bye-bye buzzkill," and a waving hand. Another added a party popper. Someone else posted a picture of Cody with a crown photoshopped on his head. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands still on the keyboard, not typing, just frozen. It wasn't even the insult that stung the most. It was how casual it was. How easy. How fast they moved on. I'd spent 12 years there. Mentored people. Built systems that stopped real threats. Saved clients millions. Kept their data intact. And now I was a punchline in a Slack thread. A walking mood killer they couldn't wait to erase. I logged out before they could cut me off. I didn't want them to have the satisfaction of pushing the button. I walked to the server room, took one last look at the rack we'd fought tooth and nail to optimize over the last year, and left my access card on the shelf next to the backup drive. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs, all 7 floors, one last time. Not because I was feeling dramatic. I just needed to move. Needed to feel something besides the buzzing silence in my head. Outside, the rain had started again. Classic Seattle. I didn't even bother pulling my hood up. Just walked to the garage, got in my truck, and sat there with the engine off. I wasn't sad. Not exactly. I was just emptied. Like someone had come along with a giant eraser and scrubbed away 12 years of my life in the time it takes to say, "We're moving in a new direction." They called it innovation. I called it theater. And I got kicked out of the building for refusing to clap. I don't really remember the exact day I stopped going outside. It wasn't some big dramatic thing, no declaration or meltdown. Just a slow fade. I think the last time I left the apartment was to buy coffee filters. I didn't even need them that badly. After that, the days melted into each other like wet paper left in the rain. For months of silence, of stale air, of screens dimming into darkness before I realized the sun had set. I kept the blinds closed. Not out of shame or fear, just because it felt easier. Less light meant fewer reminders of what I'd lost. The place stayed quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional knock from a neighbor I never answered. I lived on cheap frozen meals, old cereal, and instant coffee. My inbox filled up with messages I didn't open. Most were probably junk or automated billing reminders, or Cody's idiotic company newsletter I forgot to unsubscribe from. I didn't bother turning off the push notifications. They stopped coming eventually. I'd stare at my desk, that old setup I used to be proud of, dual monitors, mechanical keyboard, some carefully mounted acoustic panels, and feel nothing. Just this hollow ache, like someone had scooped out the parts of me that used to care. 12 years. Gone. Erased like I'd never been there. No goodbye party. No thanks. No dignity. Just a Slack message with a dinosaur emoji and a forced escort out the door. Some days I thought about cleaning up my resume. I'd open the file, stare at the blinking cursor under summary, then close it again. Who was I summarizing? What was I even trying to sell? I wasn't some bright young coder with ideas and energy. I was the guy who didn't play along. The buzzkill. The dinosaur. I stopped answering texts. Friends stopped reaching out. It felt like the world just slowly turned the page without me. Then, one night, my phone rang. That alone was strange. Nobody called anymore. Not since everything collapsed. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Maybe it was the name on the screen. Jason Ellis. We used to work together at a tiny security startup back in the early 2010s, before I got poached by the big firm. We hadn't spoken in at least 5 years. His voice came through the speaker like static over warm air. Mark? You alive? I let out a half laugh that sounded more like a cough. Barely. What's up? He didn't waste time. You heard about Axion? That was the name of the company I'd just been fired from. It felt weird hearing it from someone else's mouth, like a ghost of something I used to care about. No, I said. I don't exactly read the company newsletter these days. Jason hesitated for a second, then said, they're going under. I sat up, slower than I expected, my back stiff from weeks of neglect. What? He went on. Cody burned through the Series D in less than 18 months. Investors are livid. The board's scrambling. The acquisition pipeline dried up. Half the execs bailed. Word is, they're getting ready to sell off the IP. Fire sale. Serious vultures circling. I didn't say anything. My head felt like it had been stuffed with cotton. The idea of that place going down, the servers, the code, the infrastructure I had poured myself into, it should have made me feel something. Anger. Vindication. Something. Then he dropped the line that cracked the wall. I know some people, he said, and they're not just looking to buy it cheap. They're looking for someone who knows the system. From the ground up. Someone who actually built the damn thing. And that's you. For a long second, all I could hear was my own breath. I looked around the room. The empty dishes, the unopened mail, the layer of dust on the bookshelves. It didn't feel like a life anymore. Just an aftermath. Jason didn't push. He never did. That was one of the reasons we got along back in the day. After a while, he just said, I figured you'd want to know. And then the line went quiet. I didn't even remember the shares at first. They were old, pre-split equity from back when the company was 10 engineers in a rented space above a dry cleaner, back before any of the culture nonsense, before the second funding round, before Cody and his manicured apocalypse. Back when we still used folding tables as desks and wrote actual code instead of dancing around buzzwords. The shares weren't much, at least not on paper. When I pulled up the certificate from an old hard drive, the value was almost comical. But Jason said, hold on to those. He said in a fire sale, those shares could become leverage. That word stuck with me. Leverage. Jason was the kind of guy who knew how to move behind the curtain. Always had a side project. Always knew a guy who knew a guy. I let him take point. Told him I didn't want my name on anything. I didn't want them to see me coming. Not yet. He hooked me up with a fund out of Vancouver, smaller venture group run by a woman named Sasha I'd met once at a conference years ago. She remembered me. Said she respected what I'd built. Said she hated what they did to me. We moved quietly. Set up a shell company through a contact of hers in British Columbia. Something generic and forgettable, all legal, all by the book. Jason put me down as a silent angel investor, someone interested in legacy systems and undervalued IP. Which, technically, wasn't even a lie. The timing couldn't have been better. Cody was drowning. The board was fractured. They were trying to dress the company up for a buyout, but nobody wanted to touch a firm bleeding cash with no leadership stability and a bloated user base from a gamified strategy that never converted to real clients. Their core product, the security framework I had personally architected, was still running, still profitable, still solid. But they buried it under a mountain of gimmicks. Sasha played it perfectly. Came in with a reasonable offer that sounded generous for a company in freefall. The board bit. She negotiated hard, made all the right noises about synergy and strategic alignment, while carefully steering the terms to one non-negotiable clause. We wanted a 51% stake. Controlling interest. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, lights still off, blinds still drawn. Except now there was a different kind of tension in the room. I wasn't hoping anymore. I wasn't wishing. I was watching, calculating, remembering every meeting where they told me I didn't fit. Every skipped bonus cycle. Every fake smile from Jeff. Every Slack thread with my name turned into a joke. When the papers were finalized, Sasha called me directly. It's done, she said. I didn't say anything right away. I just let the silence stretch, let the weight of it settle into my chest. She cleared her throat. You own it now, Mark. More than half. You're the majority. I stood up from my desk, walked to the window, and opened the blinds for the first time in 4 months. The street was the same. People walking their dogs. Buses humming by. But it looked different somehow. Like I had just stepped out of a coma and found the world still spinning, waiting for me to re-enter it. Keep me anonymous for now, I said. Sasha laughed softly. That's going to be hard once you start making calls. I'm not making any calls, I told her. Not yet. But I already knew what I was going to do. Not for revenge. Not to teach anyone a lesson. Just to remind them who actually built the foundation they tried to dance on. A month after the deal closed, I got the official invitation. Board meeting. Private conference room in the downtown office. The same building I used to ride the elevator in every morning at 8:03, coffee in hand, mind already racing through bug reports. The same lobby where I stood on my last day, badge deactivated, security guard pretending not to recognize me. I wore the same boots that day, the same jeans, just to remind myself none of this was about pretending to be something I wasn't. The boardroom hadn't changed, still smelled like carpet glue and money. Half the faces were new, guys from the fund, a couple of distant investor reps, but the ones who mattered, I knew. They didn't know me, not anymore. They saw me as the investor behind a firm called Litora Holdings. Quiet, efficient, controlling stake. That's all I needed them to see. Then the door opened, and in walked Ethan Park. I hadn't seen Ethan in nearly 6 years. We came up together back when the company was still raw. He was the guy who'd stay up with me at 2 a.m. debugging kernel vulnerabilities. The guy who kept a flask of really good scotch in his desk drawer and only brought it out when we crushed a release ahead of schedule. We lost touch when he left for a startup in Vancouver. I knew he'd done well, but I also knew he hated what Axion had become. When I called him 2 weeks after the deal closed, we didn't have to say much. Just aligned like it was still 2014. Ethan stepped up to the front of the room, clean-cut, calm, confident. He nodded to the board chair, thanked everyone for their time, and introduced himself as the new CEO of Axion Technologies. There was a murmur of confusion. One of the old board members leaned forward and asked what happened to Cody. Ethan didn't flinch. Mr. Langford has transitioned out of the organization following our recent acquisition, he said smoothly. The board has approved my appointment effective immediately. Nobody objected. They couldn't. Sasha had already pushed it through with the majority vote. That was the beauty of a controlling stake. Nobody could stop it. They could only act surprised. Then Ethan started the presentation. No slides. No buzzwords. Just a whiteboard and a black marker. He drew a line down the middle. Left side, what we used to do. Right side, what we had become. On the left he wrote things like network hardening, endpoint defense, custom firewalls, secure API gateways. On the right, culture initiatives, internal video contests, gamified metrics, brand synergy campaigns. He put the marker down. We're restructuring, he said. Effective immediately. The room went still. We're cutting non-essential programs. We're halting all brand development contracts. We're pausing recruitment for the internal culture team. All resources are being redirected to our original mandate, building secure systems that work. We're done entertaining ourselves. It's time to start protecting clients again. The look on Jeff's face was worth every sleepless night I'd spent in that apartment. He was still there, clinging to the org chart by a thread, technically in charge of operations strategy. He tried to speak, but Ethan cut him off politely. We'll be reviewing department leads this quarter, he said. Any roles that don't contribute directly to product output will be reevaluated. There it was. Not revenge, not exactly, but something that felt close. Controlled. Precise. Like finally breathing after holding your head underwater for too long. At the end of the meeting, Ethan turned to the board and said, "This isn't about nostalgia. It's about clarity. Somewhere along the way, we started treating this place like a personality cult. That ends now. We're engineers, not influencers." And just like that, the room shifted. The tone changed. No more fireworks. No more Slack dances. Just a quiet sense of inevitability. Afterward, as everyone filtered out, Ethan and I stood by the window overlooking the street below. Neither of us said anything for a long time. Then he turned to me and said, "You want your badge back?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not here to go back." He nodded. "Good. Because we're not building backward." Then he walked out, just like that, leaving me alone in the boardroom. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I'd been erased. I felt present. Solid. Like maybe I hadn't lost 12 years. Maybe I'd just been waiting to take them back. It happened quietly. No emails. No memos. No Friday heads up or softly worded HR statement. Just a digital silence that hit 12 employees at once the following Monday morning. They logged in, or tried to. Passwords didn't work. Slack accounts gone. Email access revoked. Their names vanished from the org directory like someone had reached into the system and snipped their wires clean. 12 of them. Every single person who posted, liked, laughed, or added a celebratory GIF to that Slack thread the day I was fired. The dinosaur comment. The bye-bye buzzkill. The ones who clapped when the door closed behind me and thought nobody would remember. They weren't top performers. Most were culture hires, hype people, emoji specialists, the ones who spent more time pushing air than code. Their job, unofficially, had been to amplify Cody's vision. Keep the energy elevated. Keep the brand cheerful, no matter how little it delivered. Now they were gone. Ethan didn't say anything to me directly. He didn't have to. It wasn't discussed in meetings. There was no, let's make a list conversation. It just happened, clean and surgical, like pulling the infected teeth from a jaw that finally remembered how to bite. I watched it unfold through internal channels, from a distance, exactly as I'd planned. No involvement. No signature. I wasn't operational. I wasn't an executive. I was just a name on a voting file, technically silent. But every one of them knew. The news started spreading by noon. Private Slack chats lighting up in panic, DMs flooding the remaining team leads, whispers about a purge and retaliation, like they were surprised there were consequences. Like it hadn't occurred to them that their digital graffiti might outlive the party. One of them, a guy named Brett who used to run the Monday dance calls like he was auditioning for a children's show, posted something on LinkedIn about how startups can turn toxic overnight. I almost laughed. Like it happened to him. Like it wasn't something he helped build, helped weaponize, helped aim. They called it a firing squad in one of the private chats. I saw the screenshot later. 12 in one morning. It's a Silicon Valley-style firing squad. They weren't wrong, but they missed the point. It wasn't about numbers. It was about memory. It was about not letting people get away with gutting something real and laughing while it bled. I didn't send a single message. I didn't answer the calls. I just watched and waited and let them sit with it. Because there's a special kind of clarity that comes when the people who turned your life into a punchline finally realize the room isn't laughing anymore. It took 3 days for it to hit social. I was in my apartment, same desk, same chair, same setup I hadn't touched since the shell company deal closed. I still wasn't back in the world, not really. Still kept the blinds halfway down. Still ate standing up. But I checked Twitter that morning like I always did, reflex more than interest. And there it was, sitting near the top of my feed, already past 10,000 likes. My company just fired me with no notice. I used to cheer when they let go of a toxic old dude. Guess I was next. Be careful who you celebrate losing. It didn't mention me by name. It didn't have to. Anyone who had been around long enough knew exactly who it was about. The tweet came from Sasha L., one of the mid-level team leads who had clapped loudest when I got cut. She was the one who replied to the dinosaur comment with a row of fire emojis. The one who posted a selfie from the break room with a caption like, "Vibes are finally healing." Now she was unemployed and tweeting about karma like it was some ancient force she hadn't seen barreling straight at her face the second she hit send back in March. The reactions split fast. One half of the internet ran with it like it was justice, like it was a fable with a perfect punchline. The replies filled with things like, "You love to see it," and "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." People screenshotted the old Slack thread. Somehow, someone had saved it. The buzzkill message, the celebration gif, all of it surfaced. Names tagged, comments dissected, receipts printed in public view. The other half of Twitter turned the story into a warning shot about corporate tyranny. Threads popped up about toxic tech bros staging revenge purges and how startup culture is built on fear, not innovation. Think pieces followed. LinkedIn influencers weighed in, trying to spin the narrative toward whatever tone got the most clicks that week. Some called it a culture correction. Others called it a vendetta disguised as leadership. A few people even tried to defend Cody, like he'd been some misunderstood visionary and not a charisma bomb wrapped in startup jargon. Meanwhile, inside the company, everything stayed quiet. There were no press statements, no PR crisis management posts, just silence. Ethan didn't budge. Sasha didn't blink. And I didn't lift a finger. I kept reading, watching, letting the noise pass through me like weather. Because it wasn't about the tweet. Not really. It was about the moment, the shift, the sudden realization that maybe, just maybe, actions had weight again. That maybe a company built by engineers didn't have to dance for clout. That maybe the people who laughed when they pushed someone out weren't untouchable anymore. The tweet kept trending. People kept arguing. But inside the company, we got back to work. No emojis. No morning dance calls. Just code. And silence. And the hum of something being rebuilt. It started as a rumor. Some guy in a mid-tier tech blog posted a thread piecing together shell companies and ownership records, and the theory started to spread like a slow-burning fuse. By the time Forbes called, I knew the secret wasn't going to stay quiet much longer. Sasha reached out first, said they wanted to do a feature. Not just on the acquisition, but the whole arc. The firing, the return, the restructure, the fallout. I wasn't interested at first. I didn't want to become a story. But after everything, after the Slack thread, the tweets, the whispers, the smirks, I decided I'd rather tell it myself. They sent a writer from the West Coast, some guy in a fleece vest and sneakers that probably cost more than my first laptop. We met in a quiet cafe in Belltown, corner table by the window. He brought a recorder and a list of questions he didn't need to ask. He already knew the bones of the story. What he wanted was the quote, the moment, the headline. I gave it to him. They fired me for not playing by their rules, I said. Now this is my playground. I just changed the players. He laughed, like he couldn't believe I actually said it out loud. But I wasn't joking. I wasn't posturing. I said it the way you might describe the weather, because that's what it felt like to me now. Something obvious, something that had already happened, something that didn't need spin or sugar. The article dropped 2 weeks later. Front page. My name in the title. How a fired engineer secretly bought his company and flipped the script. It spread faster than I expected. Tech sites reposted it with clickbait versions of the quote. Twitter exploded again. Half the comments treated me like some kind of folk hero. The other half called me a corporate warlord with a grudge. Someone even made a meme of my face over a chessboard with the words, "Your move." I didn't reply to any of it. People from my past started reaching out. Old coworkers, college friends, a few mentors I hadn't spoken to in years. Some wanted to congratulate me. Some just wanted to say they saw it. Others asked if I had any openings. The ones who knew me best didn't say much at all. They just sent a simple message, something like, "About time." Ethan handled most of the press follow-up. Sasha did the background cleanup. I just went back to the office, sat at a desk with no nameplate, opened a fresh terminal window, and started tracing the old code base. It was still there, under all the marketing fluff and dashboard bloat. Clean, efficient, built for speed and safety. The media buzz kept spinning for a while. Panels, podcasts, think pieces. But eventually it slowed. Eventually it stopped. And when it did, all that was left was the work. The system. The thing we had always meant to build before it got turned into a brand. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fixing someone else's mess. I felt like I was building again. From the top down. On my own terms. The company's running clean now. No fluff, no fireworks. Just code and clients and the kind of numbers that don't need to be dressed up in emojis. Profit margins are solid. Infrastructure's stable. The product speaks for itself again. Most days I don't even show up at the office. I don't need to. The people who stayed, the ones who knew how to build, don't need managing. They need space and silence. I give them both. Every now and then, I hear about some old colleague whispering my name in private chats. The ones who left or got cut still talk like it was a vendetta, still trying to frame it as some elaborate revenge fantasy played out across Slack and spreadsheets. They say things like he nuked the place or he planned it for years. They treat it like I walked in with a grudge and walked out with a trophy. Like it wasn't a reaction to a system they all helped break. But I don't correct them. Let them spin whatever version they need to sleep at night. I'm not interested in redemption arcs or legacy management. I didn't do this to be remembered. I did it because it had to be done. Because they cornered me, cut me out, and laughed while they did it. And because when you push someone far enough, they don't always come back with an apology. Sometimes they come back with the paperwork. I don't care if you think I'm a hero or a monster. I did what I had to do. Because sometimes, to survive, you have to become the problem that was expected of you. So that's it. That's the story. Now I want to hear what you think. Was it revenge or just cleanup? Would you have done the same in my place? Or walked away and let it rot? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious. Thanks for sticking through to the end.